Hey, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. First hour is general discussion about anything that you might have questions about. And the second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we're going to talk about budget, audio on a budget. So stay tuned for that. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Mitch, what do we got?
Thank you, Alex. Our first one's in from Adrian Ulbach in Brisbane, Australia, looking for an ENG-style camera rig. There are several PMW F5 and F7 cams in my area at attractive prices with various accessories. What disadvantages, if any, are there buying these besides normal wear and tear? Some have only 300 hours on the clock.
Go ahead, Carl.
I would be looking at a Blackmagic Broadcast G2. So it is essentially a 6K cinema camera. So you can take PL lenses. You can take away any mount lenses because you can change them out to Nikon, Canon, PL. It's brand new. It records RAW. So, but you won't get with the F5. So the F55, I believe, was the cheapest Sony that did RAW back in the day. So yeah, I'd be looking at a new Blackmagic Broadcast G2, which is essentially a Super 35 6K camera.
And go, Courtney.
I'd look around for the media that it uses. Those Sony cameras use S/S, SXS memory cards, which are expensive and getting harder and harder to find. Good ones cheap. So make sure that you don't buy a camera that memory will break you if you have to buy it for the media.
Good, Bill.
I agree with exactly what Courtney said. That was going to be my first point. The other thing is just realize that camera lifespans are decreasing as phones get better and better from that side, as the later arrival companies like Blackmagic do these fabulous things at a lower price point. Some of this technology that I consider kind of transitional, particularly those cards, was something that existed for a while, a little like M2 was in broadcast, and they didn't have a big lifespan. So if you're going to just use it for the next couple of years and want a really good camera that puts out a good signal and the media costs don't bother you, great, go for it. It'll be a good camera. But for the long run, I wouldn't build my career on something from that era.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's really convenient about the Blackmagic cameras is the SSD output, or the USB 3 output, or C output. It is super convenient to be able to record to a drive that's external that you can buy on Amazon. I would never buy a camera with specialized memory ever again. And I've had a lot of them, and I just wouldn't do it again. It's a little hell that you'll get to work with if you're actually recording to camera. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I just got back from our Labor Day off-grid camping trip where we went and shot a bunch of content for John's Rocket Universe out in the desert. And I shot a lot of stuff on my phone, and I really, really, really believe that we are on the cusp of like a hard cutoff where if cameras don't have computational power built into them, like some of the exposure, what's the word that we use? Computational photography tricks that the iPhone does. Nobody's going to care. Like nobody's going to want to buy a camera that doesn't have a super smart computer in it, because I'm seeing stuff. I've been doing this for 4 decades. I'm seeing stuff coming out of that phone when it comes to like kind of being in the woods, and I have a black truck. I see all the detail in my vehicle, and yet the sky that's peering through the trees has all the detail. It's amazing what that phone does. And I don't care if it's a Blackmagic or an Ari or what, if it doesn't have a really powerful computer in it that does the same kind of stuff that the iPhone's doing, I think that we're within 2 to 3 years that people are just going to laugh at the thought of buying a camera that doesn't have a computer in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely obviously a lot of creature comforts that we need for production that we need a bigger camera for, whether it's an RE all the way. I mean, we just whether it's an RE all the way down. But for general, it depends on what you mean by ENG as well. I will tell you, as someone who I lived in Washington D.C. for about 6 months, and so you get to see all the news gatherers who are reporting on Washington, whatever's happening in Washington D.C. I would say a solid 60 to 70% were using iPhones. Like literally, they had their little things set up, and they would set up, and that only a couple of years before, to Chris's point, were all camera crews. It was an audio person, a video person. These were just iPhones by themselves on a tripod, them doing it, and they were And I got to tell you, I'd see this stuff. I had the opportunity because of where I worked. I would see the footage that I had seen them outside shooting. I would see it on a big screen, and I really didn't see any difference. From a 2/3 inch chip, I can definitely see the difference on a Super 35 or full frame, but on a 2/3 inch chip between the 2/3 and the iPhone, I couldn't tell the difference. I do think that you'll be fine with buying these cameras if they're good, if it's really a good price. If the price was for those cameras anywhere near a Blackmagic camera, though, I'd be much more likely to buy one. Just buy a new one that has all the creature comforts. The interface on the Blackmagic camera is head and shoulders better than everyone else. No close second. I mean, the Canon and Sony have never really figured that out. And they have good cameras. But the only interface that I would say is competitive at this point with Blackmagic for different reasons is the ARRI. It's got a really simple interface. Go ahead, Carl.
Just remember that with pretty much any camera, that it's not disposable, but the camera is just a workhorse essentially. Lenses is where it's at. So lenses is where the cost is going to be. Lenses is where your budget is going to be looking more at, depending on what you're doing. Even if you're doing ENG style, you want to get like a Canon 20x zoom, you're going to rent it or you're going to buy it for $5,000 to $10,000. So cameras are relatively cheap compared to what needs to go on the front of them.
Yeah, and again, I think it really depends on when you say ENG, what you mean. Like, what does that actually mean, and what kind of footage that you're pulling? Do you need 20x lenses? Is it mostly just going to be standing on the street? Is it going to be, all of those things will help affect of that decision. I will say, from Sony's perspective, the one that a lot of us I just have to get in the lab is the FR7. I mean, it is the most disruptive camera I have seen in 5 years, at least. This is the new PTZ camera. It is a PTZ full frame sensor with an incredible interface built. So when I said they haven't figured it out for their ENG cameras, they haven't figured out the interface. But the FR7 is just got released. It's not really in the wild yet, but wow, does it look amazing! That's a game changer for a lot of us who want to do studio work. It's not going to be good for putting in the back of a conference room, but you could never use a full frame sensor in the back of a 300 people. So it looks remarkable. So that's the other one to look at if you're not trying to carry it around. Next question.
Next question in from Dan Huber in Erie, Pennsylvania. Dan asks, can anyone recommend an iPhone app to measure the noise or dB level in a room? It would be handy to show people that he's consulting with how loud a room is.
Go ahead, Carl.
So there is one. So this will work on, I believe, on nearly any platform for Apple. So iPad, Mac, and the iPhone. So essentially, this is the free version. Get this one, use it. When you hit the ceiling, there is a paid version. I think it's around $40 or $50 US for the pro version. The pro version's worth it if you're going to be doing it a lot, but the free version can do some pretty basic stuff that you may want to do.
Yeah, go, Jesse.
Yeah, there's another one that I've used. It's called the NIOSH sound level meter. I'll put the link there in the chat, and it actually can calibrate an iPhone microphone, so it says. But it might at least give some kind of rough reference. And you probably want to, if you're using like an iOS device, like remove the case and all that kind of stuff. So I'll put that in the chat.
Go, Bill.
And I think I use SPL meter from Studio 6 Digital. It is up to 11.1, so obviously they've been doing consistent revisions of it. I haven't used it in quite a long time because I haven't been in a circumstance to do that, but I think there are quite a few in this category.
Yeah, I use the one that Carl had recommended, the decibel with the dB on the front. I have actually had the opportunity to take my phone and set it right next to a calibrated decibel meter that's $2,000, and their numbers were plus or minus 2, like within the range of what's going on, the time it got there. So it was remarkably accurate. I was kind of surprised because I wanted to calibrate it in my head, like, is it a little loud or is it a little soft compared to what the decimal meter that was considered standard for where we were at, and it was right on. So it's quite a thing. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer from Viera, Florida asks, how do the panelists deal with Zoom presenters on ZoomISO that mute their camera when not speaking, despite being told not to?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Well, first, I think it's important to point out why we do that. Why we don't want people to mute their cameras is because we have this fine-looking super source that's going on. And we need to be able to set that up. And it just doesn't look right if you got a black frame in a super source or a gallery view. So that's one of the reasons we don't want to do it. As far as what we do to them, we just put it on their permanent record card.
Yeah. Go, Jesse.
Yeah, and as Andy Carluccio is mentioning in the chat here, there are new options with ZoomISO version 2, where you can set those outputs to do different things or bring up certain images or switch to other things in your system using OSC. So it's there's more possibilities of what you can do now if you're not receiving a video from a participant.
Yeah, and I'll underline that. You need to move to version 2. Like I know it's brand new, but just move to it. It's way stable. It's really much more stable than version 1. And I know it says beta, but as Jonathan and Andy talked about on Saturday, you need to move up. I am moving a show that we're doing tomorrow to version 2. Today is my little project day to get it all working. And, we're recording a podcast, and what I have 3 remote participants, and I'm going to set that all up so that I go out of version 2 into loop back into Hijack and just record them all there as individual ISOs. But I would highly recommend it. Now, one of the new options in version 2 is to put up an image, and I think you can define it. I can't remember whether you can define it or not. Put up an image. What you need to do is you put up one with a, kind of a weird scruffy kid with a t-shirt and their hair going everywhere, and they've got, like chocolate all over their face. And that's the replacement image if you turn off your image. And I think that they'll keep it on the whole time. Like, it'll have your name under it, and it'll have that picture of you. Or we're gonna, and that's what you're gonna look like if you turn it off. And I think that if you did that, everyone would fall into line. You just need a little encouragement. All right, next question.
Next one in from Johnny Estias from Manila. Now that I'm moving to an SDI workflow, I need to start making my own custom cables. I've heard of brands like Belden and Canare, but I would like the panel's recommendation on types and brands of cables, connectors, stripper, crimpers, etc.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, on cables, you might look into, I thought about making my own when I transitioned to a lot of SDI cables, and I found that the bigger, high-quality 12 megahertz cables that you'd need for, super high def long distances take up so much space in my cases that, and I really almost never use them. So unless you're going to be running long distances on stuff, you might look at the Belden 1855 cable. Looks something like this. You can see it's a small diameter coax. It's good for up to 6 megahertz. So it'll do 4K, and don't get it too long. You can get them in 50-foot lengths and get them pre-made and pre-crimped. Professionally crimped are going to hold up a lot longer than the ones you probably crimp yourself unless you have a really expensive crimping tool. So that's what I did.
Yeah, what we use, or we've used a couple different things for our cables. Typically, our cables, because if you're not doing long runs, as Courtney said, you can use a much finer cable. We're using 23 gauge. We use either the Clark is where we buy our cables, and they are CD 7523s, but we're moving to CD 7523 UHD, of course, so that it can handle 12G. These are still very fine cables. We found that we can run 12G on them up to about 50 feet. So it's not they're not rated for 12G because you have to go further than that to get rated, but they are pretty useful there. We use Neutrik. I'm pretty specific about Neutrik rear twist cables are life-changing. Like, I just sigh every time I see anything other than those on the end of a cable, because you can now reach into a high-density connection with your hand and undo them rather than using a trumpeter. So I really suggest thinking about those. You can also get color codes. So I use resistor codes 1 through 10 so that I know what I'm looking at. And if not, at least I know what's on both ends. So worst case scenario, if they get mixed and matched, at least white is on this end and that end. And so those are the things that we use pretty heavily. We use a coastal cable wire stripper, and you can get little ones that you can use your finger with. You just wrap it and you go like this, and they're like, I don't know, $30. This one is like $800. If you're going to make a lot of cables, again, it really makes a difference. You just put it in, hit the button, pull it out, and it's got all the cuts exactly where they need to be, and it really speeds the process up. One little thing is getting sheath off, I used this was a tweezers that has a silicon end on it so that it doesn't cut the wire that's in there when you're stripping it. And I find that I can get the shield off much faster that way as I'm working. And so you can just get this on Amazon for $14. I don't know what crimper we use. It's a pretty nice one. But we make, I don't know. I think we're going to probably make 100 cables this week. so a lot of cables get pushed out. We buy the cables in rolls of 1,000 typically. I mean, it's not, we just buy a roll of the coax, and then we put them on, and now you have them all at the length you want. It is 1/10 the cost of buying cables, on anywhere else, is to build them that way. And if you get good at it, I think that they're generally just as good as anything we buy. Courtney.
I think I forgot to mention because Alex mentioned his rear twist nitrix. A lot of the cables that I bought that have those nice skinny cables, and I don't want to tear them apart to put new connectors on them. I 3D printed these things. I got to sell these things one of these days.
Yeah, you should.
They're little, they're printed out of a TPU, which is a flexible, semi-flexible plastic. You heat it up a little bit, you slide it over to make it stretchy, a little stretchier than normal. You slide it over the B and C connector, and it gives you this hexagonal shape that you can twist easily, even in a dense area with just your fingers. Yeah. And that's been a lifesaver. I put it on all my skinny cables.
That's great. That's great. Next question.
From Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana, what would be the best practice for getting 4 HDMI out of an M1 Mac Mini from ZoomISO?
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, so they definitely support SDI outputs on the Deck Link card. So the rock solid way to do that I do is the Deck Link Duo will do 4 SDI outputs. And you can also use Display Link. I think Chris actually on this panel has used Display Link. I haven't really experimented with that yet, but that might be another option to try.
Yeah, the Deck Link into a Sonnet box is definitely the best way to get signals out. I'm actually about to today I'm setting up this little mini ZoomISO machine, that is going to be my little project place that I'm going to start doing some of the podcasts that, the Gray Matter show on. And as this is my own personal R&D to make this work. And I'm getting the SDI Mini Extreme, and then I'm going to use a Mac Mini with the Sonnet box and a Duo card. I'll probably eventually buy a quad so that I have the ability to go up to 8 outputs. I don't think I will. And for the show that I'm doing, I should only need 4, but I think Jesse's right on the mark. That's the way to get high density out now. And I think I would highly recommend it. You could probably a bunch of ways to do it, but I would highly recommend just biting the bullet and doing it the way that'll work. One thing to look at if you have the money is that 1U that takes one card. It'll take the Deck Link card and a Mac Mini, and then you just have 1U that is the thing that does the thing. So I'm looking at that as well. Next question.
Ari Block from Tel Aviv, Israel asks, is it possible to control the Flow 8 from Companion? It would be great to be able to change settings from the Stream Deck.
Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, you sure can. So the good thing about the Flow 8, you can control it from the app, of course. Now, the app won't work on the M1, as far as I'm aware at the moment. Maybe that's changed. But you can control it from any computer with the Flow 8 because it has MIDI implementation. So pretty much every knob, every function, including even turning on and off effects and setting the tap tempo and all that kind of stuff, can be done via MIDI. So you can actually either create your own little app or just use a MIDI controller, and then all your MIDI CCs control every fader, every EQ, compression, all that kind of stuff. You can do it.
Sounds perfect. Next question.
Next question in from Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. He has a link there and asks the question, I'm trying to find a supplier for the center pole that's a foot shorter. It's too tall for commercial doors as when it's assembled.
Good, Bill.
One of the things you look at when you're buying a stand is how many stages do the stand have? At least that's one of the things that I look for, because the more stages it has, the shorter it collapses too when it's compact. I took a quick look at that. I think that's just a 2-stage stand that has a lower riser and a top riser in them. I looked very carefully down at the base, because often those bases that are, I think that's a folding base, not unlike the Manfrotto bases. Often they have a little, you can unscrew that and pop the center column out of that, in which case you can certainly, if it's the same size, just find somebody else's third-party column that has more stages. That might fix your problem right there. So just do some measurements, look at that, and then go online to the bigger houses. B&H has a lot of things, so does Marker Tech, and there are other grip companies that have a lot of poles that are about the same, and it'll normally tighten down large enough so that you may be able to switch the center pole out.
Go ahead, Carl.
So these are all, most of these, Godox makes one, and this is Impact. They all make one. They're all around 7.5 to 8 feet. The whole point of that is because clamshell lighting. So you can actually put one light up the top, put your camera in the middle, and put a lower light down the bottom, and do clamshell beauty lighting all day. You don't have to, it's just one stand. You can move around the whole studio. That's the reason why. So if you want to go down to maybe 6.5 feet or 6 feet, just go to Home Depot, buy yourself a hacksaw, cut it off. It's just a pole at the top. There's nothing.
I have to admit, I was going to suggest a chop saw. I mean, the hacksaw will work, but I was going to get something motorized where you can go out and rent a chop saw, and then it'll take about 10 seconds. It'll take more time to pick it up than it does to take it.
That's right. And it's a 2-section. So they're 2 sections, so they ship a little bit easier. So it is a smooth pole all the way down, but you just take the top section off. As you said, you can just put it through a saw, put it down. But you just cut off.
You probably take it to Home Depot and they'll do it for you. Or to a hardware store. They'll just cut the foot off the top of that. That is the easiest way to do it. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I didn't go the Home Depot route because we use American-made grip equipment, AmericanGrip.com, or I think that's their address. And we have custom ones made. They will make custom ones. Even I've ordered 2 custom, and they will do a run of 2 for you. They make them at their shop over here in Burbank, and I just order them, a shorter size on each of the risers so that they go up. I don't need them going any taller than 7 feet. So they make me a cut down version that's taller than their shorty and shorter than their tall one, and it fits in the car a lot better.
That's awesome. Next question.
The 7th Scroll in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, guys. What are your thoughts on using neon lights and signage in your physical set backdrop display for virtual events?
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, it's a creative thing, but be careful. And I'm assuming you don't actually mean real neon, because real neon generates a fair bit of sound and it's a little bit finicky. Assuming you're using, that faux neon with LED in tubes and you can dim it and it's not terribly distracting, then go for it. But that's a fair number of caveats.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I think neon can be very distracting, and sometimes, hold on just a second.
He's being distracting.
As I was saying, it can be somewhat distracting and annoying, but I like it.
Go ahead, Carl.
So there's a few little things. Neon can be flicker. It can flicker at certain shutter speeds. And the other thing is you can't dim neon. So you have to put like an indy in front of it and stuff like that. So it's not really dimmable the way the current works in neon.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yes, neon is a high voltage type device, and it can generate noise in the AM band and with wireless mics and video transmission and anything else that is in the RF band. So you want to stay away from that. If you're using LEDs as a substitute, which is what everybody does these days, you got to make sure that the dimming circuit, the control circuit that's running it, doesn't use a pulse width modulation to dim it, because it'll narrow the pulses, and at certain frame rates, depending upon the pulse width of the power supply for it, or the power controller for it, it's going to start to flicker depending upon what your frame rate is on your camera or the shutter speed is on your camera. And if it is flickering, you might try adjusting the shutter speed on your camera to eliminate the flicker, because you open up the shutter speed to a longer opening, wider opening, or a longer exposure time, and it can eliminate a lot of that flicker.
Go, Jesse.
Yeah, maybe it should also be said that bright lights in the background can influence camera's auto exposure. So one of the things that I do in tech checks pretty often, it's on the list, is like look at open windows. Bright things behind people can really distract your eye, as well as really kind of blow out the image and blow out your camera.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
And to Courtney's point, if you're going to dim it, 2 ways to do it. One is, and this one here, it is a real neon light, by the way. The Hungba power supply that has a built-in dimmer dial on it that does it at the level of the power supply. If you use an external dimmer, you're going to run into problems with flicker. And the other way to dim it is just throw some NDI film on it, which I did.
Or ND film, right?
ND, sorry.
Although NDI film would be great. It would be like somehow send video to the cover. Next question.
Next question from Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida. What's the consensus on audio chain processing for Zoom? Live stream, HPF, gate, EQ, comp, or just let Zoom handle it?
Good, Carl.
So we tested this out last week with one of the members in After Hours, and we had that person turn off everything that they were doing on their interface, on their mixer, as far as compression and that EQ. And we just told them to go in RAW via their microphone, via a preamp into Zoom, and just let Zoom handle the, low noise suppression. And that was the most clear voice, the most intelligible voice was doing it that way, just letting Zoom, because if you do your own compression and own gating and then put it into low or just any noise suppression into Zoom, you're doing a double feed there, and Zoom kind of always makes a bit of a mess of it. Just let Zoom handle it, or use noise assist and just put on original sound. So one of the two.
Go, Jesse.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's probably no consensus, and you can hear that in the variety, even on this panel, of what's going on with audio. But I appreciate Carl's perspective or input there, at least that oftentimes less is more. And what you're hearing now, this is actually just the mic going into a mix pre into a computer. But original sound is important for as far as Zoom. Compression is often not really necessary. And if somebody has a lot of compression on their voice and they're talking for over a minute, it can kind of like be a bit fatiguing. One of the things that is common with, Zoom and live streaming and stuff like that is if your camera path is different than your audio path, sometimes you may need to introduce some delay, a bit of delay into the audio chain to sync those things up depending on the signal flow. But otherwise, like, high pass filter or things like that, then, we'd want to just kind of deal with those lightly, as needed.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Jesse, I'll try to keep my answer under 1 minute. I like my processing in line. I like to use my AFX channel. I know Mickey doesn't like it because it sounds unnatural, but I think for the application, which is Zoom, and intelligibility that the voice has to cut through, I will say that the Zoom echo cancellation is bar none one of the best I've ever heard.
Yeah, I would say I don't do any processing. I think that I try to pick the mic that makes the most sense. I think that Mitchell sounds fine, but I would generally recommend, unless you're really good at it and you really have unless you have the tools to do it, I would try to not process at all. Almost anybody. Next question.
Next question from Colin Mulcahy in Dublin, Ireland. With ZoomISO version 2, what audio setup are you considering using? Will you be using the Yamaha QL1 with BSS 326 or 806?
Yeah, we will be using that for 090 as we move over to version 2. So we have a whole other way of doing things at 090 because it's been, we have individual computers for every person and we bring it all in. And we've stuck with that for a long time specifically because of audio talkback and being able to talk back to each person. And we're still looking at how we're going to manage that as we get more tools and so on and so forth. We hope to start to be able to move to the 2.0 system. So we will be using the 806 and the QL1 for that process. For what we're doing here, we're using an X32, and we're not using the 326 or the 806. So the core of what we're going to be doing is an X32 to manage most of those things. And for the little setup that I'm using, I'm doing it all in loop back and hijack. But I'll probably end up using an X32 at some point as well as it gets more complicated. But in its most basic form, I'm trying to keep it all inside of a computer to make it all work, to see how that goes. Next question.
From Greg Gibson in Washington, D.C. Anyone seen Jonas Dautel's new InfoBee Media File Analyzer? InfoBee provides info like video codec, profile, bitrate, resolution, frames per second, field order for audio codec, bitrate, sample rate channels. Also, it finds audio gaps, black frames, and freezes.
Go ahead, John.
So I was the first one to buy Playout B from the office hours community, and he sent me a text message saying, you could be the first one to buy InfoBee. So I bought it this morning. The problem with it, it only runs on PC.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea, and I think Jonas and I have been talking about it. One of the things that I recommended, I don't know if I'm spoiling something. Sorry, Jonas. I said the fact that you can analyze, like I noticed because he was showing it to me that it'll show you like the bit rate of the file and everything. I was like, I said you should look into making, and here's the thing, this other software might actually already do this, where you could just drag a file into InfoBee and it would generate a compression preset for like media encoder to copy the file that you actually just dropped into it. And he goes, ooh, that might be doable. I have to look at that. Anyway, it's a cool little thing. It actually will show you the whole waveform, but yeah, it's Jonas. It's a PC thing.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, on the Mac side, we have had media info for a long time, which is a drag and drop file reader. But Jonas, if you can manage to make it cross-platform, I'm willing to change. It sounds like your product here has much more information out. I use media info all the time. I'm constantly getting files from clients, and the first thing I do is drop them on there just to find out bitrate, encoding, audio, all the rest of those statistics. And it's really helpful, and it's really simple. Drop a file, and there's all the information for you. So go for it, and please help us Mac folk out.
If you were able to analyze a live stream instead of just a file, I would buy a PC to use it. The tools that do that right now are super expensive. And so if you took what you're doing right now and just grabbed the segments as they came in and added that, I'd buy a little PC just to run your app. And literally that would be all it needed to do. Probably be some kind of B-Link or not by Courtney. Or the, I can't remember the new one now. See, the problem is the new one doesn't have as good a brand. I can't remember it. B-Link,
Melee.
The Melee by Courtney. B-Link, not by Courtney. Melee. All right, there we go. Next question.
And it's from Colin Mulcahy in Dublin, Ireland. Where in the chain and with what hardware do you use WLM Plus Loudness Meters for office hours program outs? Is each panelist also using it?
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, where in the chain? The answer there is at the end. And I think what's used is audio hijack from this company called Rogue Amoeba. So watch out for those amoebas. Yeah, I'll put a link in the chat there. But basically one way you can do it is create sort of a parallel or duplicate pathway for your audio signal. So even if you're muted on Zoom, you can still monitor, what's going on. And I think Mickey says in the chat here, the meter is not measuring the broadcast level. It's just what's within Zoom here. So for office hours, your miles may vary there, but I'll put audio hijack in the chat.
And you only have to worry about the rogue amoebas in fresh water. I mean, if you're in a saltwater city, it'll be fine. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and we those of us on the panel do our mic checks in the morning, and we use the built-in one to the panel view for all of us panelists, have it up there all the time so we can take a look at it and check our level throughout the show. So it's very handy for those of us on the panel, and it doesn't involve us putting anything in our chain since it's right there, measuring it as it's going out to Zoom.
Good, Mitchell.
Yeah, and because it's from Waves, if you wait a couple of weeks, it'll be at $29.
Next question.
Next question, Nathan G. Sammy from Singapore. Is there a way to control the Flow 8 with a PC or Mac?
Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, so here are the MIDI implementation for the Flow 8. So essentially you can actually use a DAW to actually control this as well. So a DAW can control this. So essentially it'll control everything. So EQ, compression, so pretty much every parameter within. You can even change between snapshots. So you can even go between your presets using MIDI as well.
Next question.
Next question from Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida. How to help panelists if we see a question on deck and have some specific answers to suggest? Any way to reply or comment on that question for the panelists to see?
Go ahead, Carl.
Congratulations, Jeff. You have reached the activation energy on what it becomes to become a panelist. So you are ready to become a panelist.
when you can't take it anymore, when we're answering all the questions wrong according to you, jump on.
Come on.
Absolutely.
Come on. So essentially, come on after hours. We'll do camera check. We'll do a mic check. Make sure you're ready. And then Saturday's a good day to come on and just test the waters. But you have reached activation energy to become a panelist.
Yeah, so, exactly. Welcome. Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, I actually read this a slightly different way where it wasn't related to office hours specifically and, tools that you might use to respond to a question live might be Google. I mean, I often just use Google Docs to negotiate Q&A, within Zoom or something like that. So.
Yeah, I think that in this case, you can use the chat. I mean, some of us are looking at the event chat while we're doing this, and you'll see us refer to those things, especially on Tuesdays when we try to figure out what Mickey is going to correct us with. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. The panelists, unfortunately, the way we're set up, we usually model panel chat, which most of the people, the non-panelists really can't contribute to, so it's hard to get our attention. Discord might be, if you're on the Discord and find us, any of the panelists on Discord, send them an instant bleep, and if they have their ears on there and have the Discord booted, they'll get a notification, and they may be able to look at it that way.
And we are working on some new tools to make it easier for people watching to attach comments to a specific question as it goes through. But right now we're on hold because we want to get some specific tech done. So Chris is kind of all Makana stuff is on hold for a couple of weeks as Chris kind of focuses on something that we need to get done. Next question.
And it's from Kyle Hammond, who is in Chicago, Illinois, and also on our back end here at Office Hours. I've had a few folks ask me recently for a free iMovie equivalent for PC. I pointed them to Resolve, but are there other options?
Go ahead, Carl.
No, not really. So this is where even buying a secondhand Mac Mini makes a lot of sense, just for iMovie and all the Apple apps that come for free. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Did they kill Windows Movie Maker and those other free programs that used to exist? I mean, they were really basic, but they did used to come with every PC. So look around and see if you can scavenge an old version of that if you just want to do simple editing on a PC.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, on Windows, Live Essentials is the thing he's talking about that used to come with Movie Maker. You can still find it. It's from 2012. You can still find it online on the Wayback Machine. You can download the install and run it, and it actually runs on Windows 11. So there's that. The Photos app itself does have video editing built into it. A lot of people don't know that, but the built-in Photos function on Windows 10 or 11, you can actually do simple cuts video. It doesn't really do anything fancy like titles or anything like that, but assemblages and top and tail trimming, that kind of stuff can be done right in the Photos app.
Harshid?
Microsoft has a product named Stream. I'm not sure if the functionality is something similar to Resolve and the others found on the Mac platform, but it is something new that they're trying to push out. If you look up Microsoft Stream, you might get some more information as a particular product.
Go ahead,
and
John.
it was on Windows Weekly.
Microsoft also bought a company called Clipchamp, which is web-based editing, and they have a free version of that as well.
Yeah, the one thing that I will say in general, when you're starting to learn stuff, when someone asks me, should I learn iMovie or Final Cut, for instance, on a Mac, I just get Final Cut to do that. And the reason for that, in the same way I would say I would really look at Resolve instead of a little app, is that as soon as you get good at that little app, you're going to wish it would do more. And now you have to learn something all over again. So if you're doing lots of things, even if they're very simple, if you do lots of things, it's why, again, it costs, and Resolve is free. So on the Mac side, if you want to learn Logic or Final Cut, it costs money. On the piece with Resolve, you can do a lot of those things on your own for free. It is going to take a little bit more time to learn how to use it. You should watch some videos and take some tutorials to get over the hump. And there's some pretty good ones from Ripple Training that we've used in the past. But the thing is that now you're building skill sets that will scale all the way to film production if you ever get, if that's where you go. And its little clip, cutting and everything else totally works. It is heavy, it's a heavier app to use, but on a PC, on a Mac, I would probably learn Final Cut first, but on a PC, I would really look at Resolve as a free app that is very scalable. So like for the highest end stuff I do it all in Resolve because I need more control over HDR and audio tracks and than I can get on the other tools. So so those are the I would definitely look at it pretty seriously. Next question.
From Mike Beardmore in Reading, UK. How do panelists manage a manifest of cross-platform digital resources?
I don't know exactly what that meant, but I think I got caught up in manifest. So I'm not sure. I think that one of the things that I tend to do when I have a lot of different digital resources that are in different formats is to conform. So I will start to conform everything. Like if I see a bunch of different video files, if I'm getting WMVs and MOV files and RAW, whatever it is, I try to minimize the number of different formats that I'm dealing with. And so I throw them all into compressor or I throw them all into something else and I just pump them all out as something that's going to be more stable than trying to figure it out. Even though your editing package can import them, it is not guaranteed that it will be able to render them. So we've had problems where people will add some movies that were supplied and then we can't render it. They play fine in the editor, and it takes a long time to figure out why the render is crashing. So it's just something to kind of keep in mind. Next question.
Next question is from Colin Mulcahy in Dublin, Ireland. In regard to Unity Intercom Licensing, what licenses do we have? Do you have I/O license, expanded channels and groups, advanced program feed licenses?
We have a lot of licenses. I don't know exactly all of the ones that we have. We have some of the some of the Unity Connect licenses that we use to tie things back in, and then we have a lot of expanded. We have a large number of people. Like I think we're a couple $1,000s away from having the unlimited license at this point. So for the number of Unity things, but I actually don't know which ones we have there. Ours are all local. We don't do them. We don't run it in the cloud. So we actually run it from a server in our office. Next question.
From Joel in Mumbai, India, has anyone used FFMPEG or any other open source software as a video file transcoder?
Go ahead, Carl.
So Handbrake, which I believe has FFmpeg as one of the encoders underneath. So Handbrake would probably be one of the best. You can use VLC. VLC does do transcoding as well. I find Handbrake a little bit better as far as what you can choose and what you can select. And then, of course, if you're on the Mac side and you've got the bundle, then use compressor. But yeah.
Go ahead, Bill.
Carl covered it. I keep Handbrake and not FFmpeg, Handbrake and VLC on my desktop all the time. And if one doesn't play it, the other one almost always will.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was just going to say FFmpeg is so ubiquitous. You're probably using it in some other utility that you already are using. It's because it's the tool, it's the engine underneath it.
Yeah, and the Handbrake is a great interface for FFmpeg, which is really a command line, structure. You can go into the command line and just type out what you want, and drop something in. But Handbrake lets you. Sometimes it's a little bit. Sometimes I find the command line is easier to use than Handbrake when I'm trying to get something specific because Handbrake has so many different modes. But I think for most people, Handbrake is a great interface for that, and I've been using it for I feel like it's getting close to 20 years. And the great thing is I just had one recently. Someone sent a file that just I couldn't read it on a Mac. Just dragged on Handbrake, converted it to something I could see, and I was off to the races. Go ahead, Courtney.
All right, I was trying to find it, but I've been using something called video-to-video transcoder, and it uses FFmpeg as its engine. It's just a GUI front end, and it'll do batch conversion. So you set it up as, find these source files and convert them to this destination codec and file, and it'll process all those batches and put them in a folder for you. So you might look for that, but be careful because that particular program has been, captured by a bunch of advertising salesmen, and they glom on all their little ad servers and stuff onto it. So finding a pure version of it can be difficult.
Yeah, and Handbrake is something that I think almost anybody should have. I actually bought a DVD. I bought a DVD of a movie called The Gods Must Be Crazy because I remembered it and I wanted to see it again. And literally the DVD wouldn't play in my DVD player. Like what I bought wouldn't play in the player. It would just freeze up. So I actually took it into Handbrake and ripped it and then put it on a file and put it on a little USB stick and stuck it into my player, and it played fine. Like it was just like, okay, enough, and so it can read things that even the thing that it was designed to read, the thing that can't be read by the players. So anyway, next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. For a small indie film using just one camera with the Sony FX6, body 6K, plus lens, and LCD, etc., be a good choice. How are the ergonomics compared to Venice and other similar video cameras?
Go ahead, Carl.
I wouldn't call the Venice a similar camera. It's completely two different departments, different divisions of Sony that make those cameras. Again, I would say the Broadcast G2, which is a 6K Super 35. The reason why is because it gives you any lens mount you want. So not just the E mount, which Sony gives you. And it's the same with the Pocket Cinema camera, I guess. The Pocket Cinema camera is an EF mount, whereas with the Broadcast G2, you get the same sensor, you get the same RAW recording, and you get the ability to do raw recording via USB-C. But you actually get Nikon, PL, Canon mount, and then, you can convert anything to those as well. So that's kind of where that camera kind of wins. And because that camera is a little bit large, you can build it up or you can build it down. So that's another thing about so it can actually get quite compact and put on like a jib. If you're looking for the full frame, because the 6 is a full frame from Sony, then I would strongly suggest the Canon. So the R5C, the cinema version with the fan on the back that does the 8K 60. And then, of course, you can do 4K 60 from that or 6K or whatever. But that's only about $4,500 US brand new. So it's actually cheaper than the actual FX6.
There's a little drama with the R5 and R6 now. I don't know if you saw that yesterday.
R5C.
No, but the have you seen the drama around the R5s and the R6s?
The photography cameras.
Well, so Canon is going to enforce their autofocus patent to shut down everyone building lenses for it, other than people that they licensed.
Well, that's not actually. I know what's actually happening. So what it is, you can't just make an RF mount lens without giving Canon money. And so the EF patent ran out because it was 1987. Mm-hmm. And so there are third party for EF, and these lens manufacturers thought, we can just do it for RF, but RF has not run out of patent yet. The RF mount is patentable. This is another reason why you change mounts. Same as what Nikon does every once in a while. Nikon changes their mounts every once in a while for patents. And so you either have to apply to Canon and get permission to make third parties, or wait for the patent to run out. And because the patent hasn't run out, and Canon is not allowing any third parties yet because they haven't built out their own system yet, so they want to have one of everything first before they allow third parties to come in. The CEO said this. He says, we want our system to be mature before we allow third parties to come in. That's it. So, but people can simply machine a mount, of course, or you can actually buy a cheap Canon lens from RF, like the Nifty 50, take the mount off the Nifty 50, take electronics off the Nifty 50 and put it into your own mount. That's actually what they're doing. They're actually buying Canon lenses and Frankensteining them into their own. And that's why Canon have said no.
Yeah. And the issue is that folks that I know, suddenly everyone was like, well, we're not going to have lens selection. And, like for a long time, because it's going to take too long to do it. So it's become, it's in other communities that I'm in, it's rural the ocean. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, it's no doubt I'm a Sony fan guy. And if you're in the Sony Cinalta line, which goes all the way down to the FX3, which I'm using all the way up to the Venice, you're going to get similar looks, but not exactly, particularly when you're working on either side of the color science and perhaps even how sensitive they are in dark places. There's no way that my FX3 is going to look like a Venice, but under certain circumstances, you might be able to get away with cutting some B-roll with an FX3 or an FX6 and combining that with a Venice. The only thing that they all have in common is all Sony menu systems are horrible.
Yes. Next question.
Next question coming in from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Webcam mode on the Insta360 X3 captures everyone in 360 with 72 megapixels and has the same sensor as the Insta360 Link. So will this be a great webcam?
The same sensor on 360 is not going to be the same output. I don't think that... I have not seen a 360 camera that has been effective as a webcam. Maybe some people will think it's good enough and they can buy this and use it for a bunch of different things, but it's not going to be as good as the Link. The Link is really designed for this. Next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. After transporting my Roland Fantom-06 keyboard in a soft bag, and there's a link to it, On a long car trip, I noticed that the keyboard was making mechanical noises and felt looser. Is that normal?
Go ahead, Carl.
I have the Jupiter, so I have a similar keyboard from Roland. Mine makes mechanical noises because it is a mechanical device. So the keyboard is mechanical. It's not it's not like a capacitive display. It actually does have to actually push down levers and actually hit pressure pads for the aftertouch and that kind of stuff. As far as being maybe softer or something, that could be because it's summer at the time in North America. So if you left it in your car during the middle of the day and the car got quite hot, maybe that the rubber pads, there's actually rubber parts of them there have softened up. They'll probably harden up themselves, but it's hard to say. But if you leave it in the car and that's overheated, maybe that'll start to affect the actual rubber parts in there.
Next question.
And Douglas is back again. One of the impacts to public health bans on mass gatherings was to the hotel hospitality industry and thus to workers within it. Could you see pervasive AI making hotels and resorts less expensive to operate?
Go ahead, Bill.
Going to be challenges on both sides. Yes, it could make it somewhat less expensive to operate, but we just had the circumstance where Comic-Con came to San Diego and the hotel hospitality workers went on strike right before it because their leverage is diminishing, but they had this huge convention coming in, and the hospitality workers are being pushed to fewer and fewer hours because of things like the hotel saying, we're not going to change your sheets every day. We're going to ask you to ask for it and things like that. So the dynamics of all of these industries that are being impacted by not just AI, but robotics and automated processes and things like that. I think we're coming through an era where we're going to have to sort all that out because there are a lot of people, the balance to be gotten to, and I don't think we're anywhere close to there yet.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, automation can be applied to just a few jobs like checking in and checking out, things like that can be performed on a console or a kiosk. These days, most hotels, you don't need to go to checkout. You just leave your key in the room and you go online to the app and you tell them you've checked out. Making up beds, and cleaning bathrooms, and setting tables and serving food to the guests is not going to be AI. It's not going to help you there. There are certain tasks that AI really can't improve other than scheduling the workers at what time to come in.
Yeah, I think that many hotels in the United States, at least, have become almost as efficient as they can be when it comes to human resources. When you go to other countries, what's interesting is because the cost of labor is much lower, there is an enormous number of people working at a. So if you go to a Serena in Rwanda or something like that, there'll be literally 4 times as many people working at the hotel as. But interestingly enough, the hotel price is about the same as the United States, but they'll have 4 times as many people working there. And so because they don't need to be more efficient and they can add all these creature comforts without having to have it impact the cost. And so it is definitely, I think, because it's more expensive here, which it should be. I mean, it's just a more expensive place to live. It is, they've become pretty efficient. And I think that the cut in efficiency is also a change in behavior. There's just a lot less people are traveling. We have the feeling that everything's crowded all the time because there's a lot less flights. So we're all packed into less flights to make the flights more profitable. But it has definitely the movement has dropped and will probably continue to drop over the next decade. Of people that just don't need to do this. And COVID had the biggest impact that COVID had was changing behaviors. That changed a lot of behaviors that are not coming back. Again, not for everybody. There's 30% that are going right back to what they did. There's 30% that are kind of like, whatever. And there's 30% that just aren't going to ever come back. They're never going to come back to the kind of travel they did before. Next question.
Next question from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. What do you anticipate the media coverage of the royal funeral on Monday at Westminister Abbey? Will it be like? What will it be like? Is it at the same time as office hours? And if so, watch party?
Go ahead, Carl.
It should be around the same time. So it's going to be around lunchtime in the UK, which will be around the morning of the US, of course. It may be a little bit after West Coast time, so maybe right at the end of office hours, I'm guessing. So this is actually, this particular production that's going to happen on Monday has been being planned for over 20 years. And we've had rehearsals. So the weddings of the kids, they were rehearsals. And of course, Prince Philip's passing away last year, that was a rehearsal for this as well. So, but as far as the media, so essentially all the broadcasters in the UK actually collaborate and come together, and they've actually been rehearsing this as well. So we are seeing little bits and pieces of it already in the last few days coming out of Scotland. How seamless it is that they can actually just have a helicopter in the air 24/7, literally 24/7 is a helicopter in the air following the king and the family. But essentially, this will be an interesting production. This will be an interesting breakdown. Hopefully, we can do in a second hour or in after hours to take a look at the actual production, because it is going to be non-stop live production for probably 12 hours non-stop, and they're literally going to be following the family and especially the king and the queen's body for pretty much 6 to 12 hours, which we have seen this before, but this is going to be on a whole other scale with essentially probably about 1 million people descending on the centre of London as well.
What's interesting is when you really think about it, there are the majority of the world has not seen the passing of a monarch in the UK in their lifetime. like it's just kind of
vast majority.
The vast majority. Like it's just it's enormous. Like and it arguably is one of the most wealthy, obviously, monarchies, and so you're seeing all the stops pulled out on something that will probably happen more than once in our lifetime, but will just because of the age difference. But it's interesting that none of us have seen it in the past. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I was just going to say and amplify what Carl said. The scale of the production, we'll call it the production, with all respect to the Queen, is so huge that we couldn't carry it in a watch party, but we certainly could talk about it after the fact from the standpoint of what did it take to broadcast this, because the scope of the British Empire extends around the world and their influence along with it. So the size of the program is going to be quite large. So it's very interesting because, in a sense, we do that here in office hours every day. We're a worldwide event. So let's check some similarities.
One thing, if we start discussing this, it's going to come up over the next couple of days in after hours. I just want to make sure we're clear that we should stay out of the politics of it. Like, we can stay with the production, but a little warning that we should not be talking about whether it should be done or shouldn't be done, or all the politics connected to it. That would be living inside of our mandate not to talk about politics. Now, for Americans, it may seem like we're just talking about something outside of our politics, and it doesn't feel like politics, but it's still politics, and it's important to some people. So we want to we just want to be conscious of that because I'm sure that there'll be some discussion in after hours about it, and we will. Most likely, if it, we'll take a look at what actually happens. I mean, we're not going to do a watch party, but we'll see what actually happens. If she was releasing a new iPhone, or if they were doing that, I would definitely cover it. But it's not a technology conference, so that's what we do watch parties for. So I think that we just want to be careful of that process there. All right, Courtney, what were you saying?
I was just going to say since there's going to be many international heads of states attending, it's going to be covered by different countries in different ways to cover their individual heads of state that are attending. So the coverage won't be universal, since office hours is a global endeavor. We might find the coverage quite different in Australia and Europe.
It would be interesting if folks around the world in our group feel that the urge. It would be great if people recorded some of what the coverage looks like. Maybe we'll think about that. Maybe there's some way we can encourage people to all record at a certain time. It would be really cool to see the local coverage, for 10 minutes across. We'd have to find the right time, but for 10 minutes across the, around the world would be kind of an interesting puzzle to find there. So we should probably think about that. We have a couple more minutes before the top of the hour. Just a couple house cleaning things that we are going to definitely be doing a lot of ZoomISO version 2 tests. So I would highly recommend downloading it. If you're using version 1, version 2 is a lot more stable than version 1. It's not less stable. and we have a unique opportunity right now to help it move forward. It is, I think, probably one of the most interesting things that has happened for us in the last 6 months. Maybe a year. It provides an opportunity to move broadcast and events to a whole new level, and some of that is up to us. So we really want to, if office hours really embraces it, tests it, provides feedback, works together on getting better at it. will positively affect our future, not just Zoom's or Liminal's future, because this is a pretty disruptive piece of technology that we're going to spend a lot of time on. I'll check with JJ, but starting in the next couple days, there'll be a breakout room that runs most of the time that is running the test signal that we ran to IBC. And so that unless we need the computers, we'll put it, we'll close it when we don't have it available. But when we don't need the computers, that's going to be up almost all the time. And that's a conversation with 12 people. And that's going to, if you need to test something and throw up there and get some audio signals and some video signals to run it. That's one of the hardest things to test with ZoomISO is not having any signals to work with. And we've done that. We kind of have that open area, and we're going to continue to do that. I am going to look at possibly moving it to an earlier time so that some of our European friends have a little more reasonable time to do the testing. But we also are going to have kind of open discussion about it between 1 and 3 every day. For people that are interested, so it's kind of a lab, ongoing lab, but it's really important for us to kind of move forward with that. All right, we're going to jump into the second hour of our discussion, and we're talking about budget audio. A lot of us have a tendency to buy a lot of really expensive pieces of equipment to do what we do, but that doesn't have to be that way. And I think that there's definitely some basic things that we can work on. Like for instance, I just used, and we have to define what budget. I don't know what budget is. For us, most of our kits that are here from a broadcast standard would be considered budget, but from an average person standard would still be very expensive. I did do a recording with the T-Bone that Carl recommended. I did that on Sunday for Gray Matter, and it sounded really good. I was like, I can't believe this is an $85 mic. I don't think the preamp on the USB-C is good enough to use for me to send out with someone who doesn't know how to amplify it. So I couldn't send it out to average people. I could definitely use it, but I will say that the mic itself, and that's a good example of something that sounds very clean. It's what I've been kind of taking on the road as a test, and I think it sounds very clean. It's got good resonance, and I think that it's been really, really, really good. So that's a good example of looking at things that aren't the most expensive solutions. It does take a couple days to get here. See, I'm in an Amazon world where I'm used to like same day or next day, and this has been more of 5 days. But I will say that is it Toman? Is that right? Toman. The level of communication and professional nature of that site is kind of amazing. Like you ordered it, and here now it's been packed, and here and all the stuff that's there, but it's even more verbose than B&H. Like you really have a sense of exactly where your order is. No candies though, so it's not. It's gonna still. I'm still gonna order from Sweetwater first because I need my Bitto honeys. Go ahead, Carl.
So when I think of budget, like I would think like a Behringer, but Behringer does have like a range. They do have a cheap range, which I would steer clear of no matter what. And then they've got stuff like the Flow 8 and the X32 and the Wing. I would consider those budgets for their categories. So the Wing is a pretty powerful beast, but it's still a budget. It's still around $4,000 US, but it hits around a $10,000 weight you can actually do with it. The X32 is doesn't really have any competitors at around that $2,000, $2,500 US, or $1,000 or $1,500 for the rack version. And then the X32 is essentially maybe on its way out. It's over 10 years old now. And then you've got stuff like the Flow 8. Now the Flow 8 doesn't have anything matched, and this is why a lot of people in office hours have a Flow 8. But you're right, there are cheaper audio interfaces from Behringer and other companies that I would steer clear of. Essentially, if it doesn't have an HD in it, there's only like 3 audio interfaces that I would probably recommend outside of Behringer, and even though they probably have 20. But then you've also got stuff that I'll suggest later on for some of the questions that are from some of the Chinese manufacturers that actually do make American brands in their same factory. It's just now they're releasing it under their own name rather than putting the American branded name on their products, like Ceremonics, another good example of this. And then there are really good solutions. And these are usually products that they may be cheap, but they only do one thing. So whereas like a MixPre 3 can actually do quite a few things, you can use an audio interface, you can use it as a field recorder, you can use it as a mixer. There's a lot of things you can use it as for. There are some cheaper products out there that essentially only one trick pony. So that's why they're cheaper, because they only do the one trick, whereas some of these more expensive products can do multiple tricks. And I would kind of put them into the budget realm as well, even though you may need 3 products for just the one that you may do on a more expensive product. But essentially you're getting the same quality, but just doesn't do as many tricks.
Yeah, go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, and also to Alex's point, it is a challenge probably for some of the folks on this panel that show up with a truck of gear for a one-person sit-down interview to think about budget-related perspective. But I just wanted to throw out there, a lot of the things that could be considered budget or when you're spending money, you can also consider techniques and theory, to sort of get you around how to do things. Sometimes if you learn how to fix things or how to make adjustments in the audio chain, that will save you a lot of money and potentially, save your job or, your relationship with the client if you can fix things quickly. Those kind of skills, they don't cost you any money. It's just time. So maybe we can put some of those references in the chat for people to study up on.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, budget is a weird word because it sometimes infers that it's less expensive, but budget is not that. That's not what it really means. It means some kind of allocation of funds to do something. So I prefer to use the Sears paradigm of good, better, best from the perspective of the panelists that are here. So that might be a little bit easier way to focus in on what works well and what gets you a better ROI on your investment.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think that what Jesse was talking about, which I think is a good point, is there's an enormous number of things that that will extend what you already have with just good ball handling skills. Having a quiet room means that you need a lot less. You have a lot more room to work. Now there are certain things that do make it. That the tools provide for. For instance, you can shoot with an iPhone, and that's great. It's just that your landing pad is much smaller. When you're not shooting in log, as an example, the log landing pad is way bigger. And so if you're moving fast and you're under a lot of stress and everything else, having a lot more data is going to give you places to work with it in post. Whereas you can use a cheaper camera, you can use something that's more compressed, you can use those things. It's just that your understanding of what you're doing has to be way better. I showed years ago, I took a Canon HV20, which is this little candy cam, and I bought paper. I bought green screen paper at a photo shop, like a photo, supply area, and I got some lights from Walmart. I put them in, and I, plugged them in, and I got a better key than most people get at any. At any point in time, even effects keys that you see with most of the little hair and everything else. It's because I understand what it takes for a green screen to work well. And I understand how to reduce the variance and everything else. The same thing with audio. If you know what you're listening to, if you know what you're hearing, there's a lot of things that good equipment will get you past, but you can still actually execute it with something less. I do agree also with Carl that all the analog Behringer stuff, in my opinion, is not good. like I won't buy anything that's their analog solutions. But once they moved to start a lot of their digital tools, I think from a cost effective solution, we use a lot of them. We use a lot of X32s, the problem right now is Behringer's, if anything goes wrong with your Behringer, you're just going to buy a new one because their service is so bad right now. And we've had a X32 with a bad power supply sitting at Behringer at some reseller for maybe, I think, almost 6 months waiting for a part. So just know that that's the other part of buying something less expensive is that you're going to, it's generally disposable. Like a lot of things that are less expensive are just, if they don't work, if they stop working, you're just going to buy another one. You're not going to be able to solve that. And that has to do with, Blackmagic is a cost-effective solution for a lot of video production. And when something breaks, a large amount of the time, you're not going to get it fixed. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And on the other end of the spectrum, if you're buying a super expensive, esoteric piece of gear for audio, for example, you have to be prepared to deal with the consequences of that pricey piece of equipment. I have a Neve 8801, and luckily, when the failure happened, it happened within the warranty, maybe a little outside of it, and they fixed it for free, but it took me 3 months, and the fact they forgot to send me the power supply, if I'd had to pay for that, it might have cost $1,000 to bring it back to spec. So on the other end of it, you have to realize that even if you just save up and buy, the very best high-end gear you can, the cost of repairs or maintenance may exceed the cost of buying it at the low end.
And at the same time, a lot of times a lot of the companies that you're spending more money with per item, like sound devices is a good example. I've had all kinds of things that happen with my sound devices stuff. I bought a lot of sound devices stuff. So when I say I've had problems, when you buy hundreds of devices from a company, you'll have things show up. And the one thing that happens is if I say, hey, I need something, I have something isn't working, usually I get another version of that item before I even sent mine out. Like they want to make sure that it's all, and we've put their equipment through hell and back. All kinds of horrible places that we've sent our sound devices stuff, and so when something is damaged, it gets they handle it really fast, and you see that with a lot of other companies as well. Not all of them, but where their brand is very important, and being seen as reliable is very important. And I think that when I just want to back up because I felt like I said, well, I have all these problems with sound devices. I've had some problems with sound devices, and they've handled it very quickly. In the percentage of time that I've used it, it's been probably the most reliable pieces of hardware that I've owned. Go ahead, Harshid.
Well, the term budget here, I look at it in more of a perspective of what do you need it for. So the end purpose, let's say you have a wireless setup. Well, we do have a lot of brands that are in the market, such as Rode. We always hear Rode Go 2s and I think Godox, I believe, or somebody, Carl had mentioned it before to me. And so there are budget players in the market, but it depends what is our budget, right? What do we want the end result to be? So when I look at brands, especially with the quality of connectivity, so Audio-Technica 2100X, it's a USB microphone, but I found that was one of the only few microphones that sounded decent with regards to sound or the higher quality of volume. The other one that is always a great thing just to keep around is a Samson Q2U. They're about $100. They have a bigger brother called a Q9U. And again, these two microphones support what we need at least to sound intelligible and to sound different than you're talking on an iPhone or a Mac computer or Windows computer, and we could hear your room and you're screaming, or then you hear the dog barking or what have you, right? The other concept that I've picked up is with boom arms and such, you want to get something that's going to work for you again. So I've looked at brands here. So Elgato has this market pretty much saturated with their LP boom arm. They have, the different variations of production equipment, if you want to call it that. So you'll find repetition in industry. So go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yep.
Oh, sorry. So in the essence of brands, Elgato might have something for you like a Waves microphone, a Waves mixer. That will do just fine for you because it might have pads that you might want to do intros with, right? You don't have to buy the $700-800 Rode device, perhaps, but if you need to get to that level, then you need to push your quality to that level and buy that piece of equipment. So for self-use, make your own adjustment, write things down of what your cost is. Cables are another cost. So like cables for me, my cost was Mogami. I bought an expensive cable because I could return it with warranty. So
right, and I think that you also always, when you go down to a budget, you're what you're giving up is reliability. You're giving up robustness. You're giving up, and some of that doesn't matter for a lot of the projects that we work. So if it doesn't matter, and if you're able to do, good, again, but those are the things that for a lot of us that spend a lot more money, it's because I have to use it every day and I get paid to use it, and it'll be really expensive if things don't work, or if I can't move quickly. So if you have more time, so this little stuff that, like for instance, I'm not going to buy a Letrosonic wireless system to do the cooking with Damianti, although I have considered it. but I, the Rode Go works perfectly fine, for what I'm doing there. But the, so you have to gauge what is the cost of failure, like one of the things that you always want to think about is what is your risk? And I define risk as a mathematical equation. So risk equals the chance of something going wrong multiplied to the I can't think of it right now. The chance of something going wrong multiplied to the consequences. So C squared. But anyway, what I mean by that is that if you're doing a little cooking thing and the chances of going wrong is 20%, but the consequences are near zero, then it doesn't, it's fine. But if you're working on something that could change the market value of a company by $1 billion, and even if the chances are very, very tiny, you're going to spend all the money to make sure to reduce that risk to as close to zero as possible. And so it just depends on what's at stake, and what you're doing there. Let's jump to the next question.
And it's Johnny Estias in Manila asking, best budget wireless inner ear monitor system.
Good, Bill.
Well, there's a whole bunch of ways you can do this. You're saying wireless, which means that you're going to really be dealing with three aspects. You're going to be dealing with the actual in-ear transducer that you have to listen to. And there's a variety of those, from very inexpensive. I mean, things like this actually can work. This is a little $9 or $10 3.5 millimeter thing. It'll work for in-ear monitoring. Get various little tips for it, all the way up to things like what I'm using, which is an in-ear, which is designed for the security industry, but it's virtually unseeable. In fact, I think, there's their promo piece. You really can't even tell it's there. So if you're on camera or something like that, and you really want to look like you're not wearing one, there are solutions there. Then at the other end of things, you have the actual wireless transmitter system. So the most important thing there is to make sure that the connection on your in-ear monitor and the connection on the receiver part of your wireless transmitter are compatible. Most of them use 3.5 millimeter standard plugs, and they work for everything, but there are other types. And so that and the transmitter become a little radio station, and that means that the broadcasting part of it is going to be way more expensive than the actual transducer that you're putting in your ear. There's a little bit of difference. Some people make in-ear monitor body packs that are specifically for that. They're pretty simple. They don't have a lot of controls over them other than wireless, unlike the wireless microphone systems, which can get very complex because you're dealing with channels on a lot of things. The actual IEM units tend to be a little simpler, and they also sometimes allow talkback and some things built into them that are very nice to have. But it's an ecosystem, and you have to explore and pick your parts correctly.
Go ahead, DJI. DJI. I was typing DJI because I was looking for their in-ear. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, a couple of guidelines. If you're looking for in-ear monitors for music, that's one group of type of transmission. And then if you're looking for one just for IFB, that's another type. If you're looking for digital, be careful of the ones that are cheap. Most of the cheap ones that you find out there are in 2.4 gigahertz. So they share the bandwidth with every phone out there that's using Wi-Fi, et cetera. And they are not very good in a hostile RF environment. And the other problem is latency. If they're using a digital transmission system like over 2.4 gigahertz over that type of transmission in a digital format, in order to cover up or conceal errors, they've got to have a fairly large buffer. If they have a fairly large buffer, that means your latency goes up, and that's going to be distracting to whoever is listening in the ear monitors. So analog transmission is probably better for in-ear monitors, but then you got to deal with multipath. And so if you are looking for one, look for an analog one with diversity receiver, which means it'll have two antennas on it and automatically switch back and forth between the two to achieve the best signal quality. And you won't have situations where the sound just goes away completely, which is what happens with the 2.4 gigahertz monitors if it's blocked. And that high frequency can be blocked by just bodies on the stage if it gets between you and the receiver. So if you're going to be roaming around and changing your attitude towards the transmitter, you got to go with something analog or get your transmitter somewhere high up above the talent so it can see the talent's receiver at all times. Those are just some guidelines. Of course, the leaders in the field are Comtech, COMTEK, and Electrosonics makes good monitoring in-ear monitors for this call their IFB system. They're all analog and they're designed for doing that. So you might look on the used market, check True Audio or
the different professional sound suppliers, because a lot of them will have things in on consignment. A lot of people are unloading those old Comtech PR72 series. They're not frequency agile, but they give you a pretty good transmission range, and you can probably find them pretty cheap, and you can just plug any headset with a 3.5 millimeter jack plug into those jacks, and they work quite well.
Go ahead, Chris.
Johnny, I would be cautious. You say budget and in-ear monitors. You're actually putting something that makes noise, potentially a whole lot of noise, and you're putting it in your ear canal. And our ears, my ears are super important. And if you're doing this for like an artist on stage, their ears are their livelihood. And so I was talking to somebody once years ago about this in the music industry, and he said there's no such thing as a budget in-ear monitor. You want to make sure that you're putting a absolutely quality device in a portion of somebody's body that could ruin their career. So you just have to be super careful.
Yeah, the ones that I've seen, the lowest price ones that I've seen work really reliably are the Mi Pro 909s. So they are, I've worked at a space that uses them pretty often. They're about $750 per unit. So they are not as inexpensive as Electrosonic or the Shure. I think it's the PSM 1000, which is the one we use the Shure for almost everything we do. Just because it's rack mountable, so it's something that's easy for us to roll in. The other one that we've used the most heavily is Electrosonics, but the Mi Pro is something that, again, we've seen at a stage that has worked, seamlessly. I mean, we haven't seen it go wrong. So, and they've used it pretty heavily. So, that's the one that is probably the least expensive that we've seen work well. Of course, there are ones that are, that are definitely less expensive than that. But as Chris said, we're a little careful about the in-ear monitors. And again, for myself, I'll put something in the Rhodes, like all the 2.4s are fine. They're usually not actually very loud, so it's probably not going to do any damage. But it is, but those are the Mi Pros have been relatively successful for us. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, and we made a good point here that music headphones and in-ear monitors for comms are two entirely different classes. You want a whole different classification for a musician working on stage because their hearing is mission critical. Not that everybody else is not, but we've thrown out a lot of initialisms here: IEM, in-ear monitors; IFB, which is interruptible foldback, which is the process that came out of television stations so that a small monitor in a newscaster's ear could also be interrupted by the director in order to bring instructions to the talent on stage. And most of us in some kind of complicated production environments use some sort of IFB to be able to communicate. It's kind of a second cousin to the comms system.
Yep. Next question.
From Joel in Mumbai, in India. He's looking for a way to connect a laptop with a wireless handheld microphone to push audio to Zoom in a remote location classroom.
Go ahead, Jesse.
As far as the wireless handheld mic directly into a laptop, I mean, it sounds like you might be battery powered, so you may have to get a battery powered receiver, depending on if you're really remote. But what I wanted to mention is Mumbai, even if it's a remote-ish location, it's probably a wise idea to go out to your location before you arrive on the production day and do a RF frequency scan. And there's actually an affordable little scanner that's been out for a little while. It's called Tiny SA, and I'll put the link in the chat there. But what that does is it informs you about the real wireless RF spectrum in the area that you're going to be working at, so that you can buy the appropriate wireless system for that frequency range that's available. Because otherwise you're sort of guessing basically on what will work on the day. So I'll put that link in the chat. And as far as connecting the mic into a laptop, definitely would recommend just an affordable 2-channel Behringer USB interface. And what that'll allow you to do is to put the wireless handheld system into one channel and then have a backup wired microphone into another channel if you need it.
Good, Bill.
Yeah, and in almost all cases, wireless microphone at a professional level terminates in XLR connectors. And so some sort of interface that will allow you to take an XLR and move it into whatever computer interface you have. This one happens to be for a Lightning-connected iPhone, but they make them in 3.5 millimeter, and even other USB-C now is coming on real strong. So some sort of device that provides phantom power to the microphone or the wireless system if you need it, has level controls. Most of these, even at this level, and this is, I think, just a couple $100, allows you to switch between record or play so that you can get either an incoming signal or an outgoing signal. And that's what's going to take the normal wireless receiver and patch it into your laptop.
Yeah, and Mickey points out this in the thing is this gets into really decide whether you need wireless or not. When you start going to inexpensive wireless, you may want to think about a wired cable. A wired cable is an inexpensive way to get a solid signal, out of it. Now, you could use something like an SM58 with a X2U, on the other end, and now you have a really solid microphone with a solid USB interface, and it's going to go in there, and it's going to just be. And then there's lots of little USB mics that are handheld that'll work. This gets back into that budget conversation of, in high school, I was a wrestler, not a very good one, but I learned a lot. And one of the things you learn really quickly is to pull your elbows in, because you stick your arm out like this and someone's going to grab it and throw you, and then you're pinned, and then it's the end of the match. So a lot of times we talk about keeping our elbows in, and when you don't have a lot of money to spend, keeping your elbows in is looking at, what do I really need to do here? And will this achieve this without, when wireless on the cheap is sticking your arm out, and you may be able to get away with it, and you may be able to make it work, but you have a much higher probability, a non-trivial possibility that you're going to spend a lot of time trying to figure this out, and you'll have a bunch of kids in the classroom frustrated trying to wait for the teacher to figure out why the wireless isn't working when you could have just had something connected to it. We've done a lot of classroom activations, and all of them have been USB mics. No interfaces, no nothing. We look for a mic that has a USB output, and it plugs into the computer. And every single classroom activation that we've done in the US and in Africa have all been with wired USB mics that no one has to figure out. And we send them out to them, and we have open speakers with a mic with a high off-axis rejection, and it works great. And it's simple, and they don't have to figure it out. Remember that most likely the technology person at the far end of a remote classroom is not going to be able to handle too much, as far as complexity if things start to go wrong. Next question.
Paul Shadwell from Turbenthal, Switzerland, asked, which headset does the panel recommend in 2022 for use with Unity comms?
Go ahead, Jesse.
I guess the one that plugs into whatever version of the client that you're using. So if you're using an iPhone or something like that, then you can just use the old, earbuds or whatever. And if you're using something, if you have the I/O plug-in for Unity, then whatever plugs into the interface, like Sennheiser makes a good broadcast headset, and Audio-Technica is also pretty common. So HMD series, Sennheiser. So it just kind of depends on whatever plugs in. Mickey also mentioned, Plantronics. I like the Blackwire stuff too, the little USB. They're really lightweight. So that works.
I will admit that I don't like to get tied up in the anymore. I always have something that I can plug into my phone just in case batteries die or whatever. But for comms, I really like to have a wireless connection to the phone. And that's one of the few places that I do that with, because it's technically not going very far. And I can set the phone down in a room and walk around and talk to people and so on and so forth without too much trouble. My favorite right now is the Shocks Open Comm. And these are wireless and bone conduction. And the reason I like these specifically for comms is because I can plug in program into my in-ears, and I can throw these over top of that and actually listen and talk into comms. So I have actually two headphones on at the same time. So the bone conduction is useful for that. So that's why I like these. I have two pairs of them, so one can always be charging while the other one's working. So I named them Shock 1 and Shock 2, and I just go back and forth between these. The off-axis rejection on these mics is much better as well. So you don't hear as much of the room as I hear with most other microphones. So like your AirPods or whatever. This is a far cleaner signal for a comms. The other one that I've used in the past is the Parrot 450, the S XT. And the reason I use those is because if I really want to do this, I'm going to put both ears over top, and then I have a very focused headset there. And those are the ones that we've used the most. Next question.
Next question in from Johnny Estias in Manila. Best budget wireless handheld mic system.
Go ahead, Carl.
So I'm going to suggest that if you're doing something like budget, you can do like an SM58. If that's the case, then I would be pushing for the Godox. Now, this is a megahertz series, so it's not 2.4. It's not working off the Wi-Fi signals. So this is working off your megahertz, which is similar to the Shores and the Sennheisers. Essentially, so you can plug in any microphone you want. The MD46 is what we use back at, I believe, NAMM. But if you don't have any microphone like an SM58 or anything like that, then you can just buy this version of the Godox, which has the exact same transmitter in it, but it has microphone built in. This is I believe this microphone is very similar to the SM58. The capsule is anyway. $63 at Adorama, so it's pretty good. Now you will need a receiver for this. So the receiver you can get the Pro receiver. This is all metal with big antennas. You can get the $109 one, which is more engineering plastic and the smaller antennas. And this will do the receiving end. So then you can plug this into whatever you need.
Go, Jesse.
Yeah, and something that's not 2.4 gig is probably ideal. You want to sort of try to avoid that. And, buying something used that's built well and it's good quality is not a bad idea. So if you're in Manila, just see what Mickey has secondhand. Just kidding.
Yeah, Mickey actually pointed out the Sennheiser 100 series, G3 or G4, or the Shure SLXD or QLXD. Also, Mickey pointed out that we did experiment with cheaper wireless at NAMM, Cinegear, the Idelson Wedding, all these other things. And, we moved at IBC to Electrosonics. So the main thing is that what you want to look at there is that as you don't spend a lot of money, if it's a wireless at your house or in an isolated area, 2.4 is going to work fine. Like in your kitchen, only jumping 10 feet, not through you. There's a whole bunch of things. If you know how to use it, you can squeeze out what you need but as soon as you get into anything that's a complex environment, you need to start spending more money on your wireless or go to wired, because it really is, wireless is something that it's pretty painful pretty quickly. If you don't have if you can't cut through everything else. The one thing I will say about the Sennheiser, the first thing you do when you open up a Sennheiser is change the frequency, because nobody else does. And so, like, literally, if you open up a Sennheiser, it is the 100 series is probably the most popular wireless system I've ever seen, and you can see it like at an NAB coverage or a CES coverage. You'll even see this on the news. You'll see all these people getting stepped on all the way through the whole thing, and it's because they opened it up, they turned it on, and it was like, oh, it works. And it doesn't work in a congested environment, especially when everyone's on the same frequency. Go ahead, Bill.
Last little note, Jesse mentioned pick it up used stuff, which can be great, but watch out, because the FCC has in the U.S. sold off some of those old frequencies. So you can buy things that are no longer legal for use in the United States. They work perfectly well overseas, but just be wary of those frequency pairings of used equipment and make sure you don't get into problems.
Yeah, and you're not going to have any legal problem. No one's going to come after you from the FCC. They're too busy doing other things. But what the real problem is that other things are using that frequency.
Right.
So it was
your
fine.
Cell phone conversation shows up in your wireless,
or just hiss and all kinds of static and everything else. So in the first couple of years, it probably didn't matter because no one was doing anything with it. But it's starting to become something that everyone's using those frequencies or something else. So they're not protected anymore, and that's going to be the biggest problem that you'll have. Next question.
Paul Shadwell in Turbenthal, Switzerland. What mic should I get to use with MixPre 3 when on office hours?
Go ahead, Carl.
I think Alex has already mentioned it this episode. And the good thing is it's $2 cheaper now. So there you go.
Very good.
And yeah, this is the XLR. They're both the same price, but this is just the XLR version I'm showing.
Yeah. It's I think it's a great mic. That is a good dynamic mic. I was going to let Courtney go ahead, and I was waiting for Courtney to raise his hand because I when I'm on the road, I use Carl's mic. What I'm using right now is Courtney's mic. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yes, we can't go without mentioning the Stellar X2.
I didn't want to take your thunder. I was like, if Courtney doesn't raise his hand in like 2 seconds, I'm going to take his thunder. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, it's from TechZone. It's under $200 microphone. It has it's a large diaphragm condenser, so it's going to pick up a little more detail of the noise in the room, which mine is doing right now, and that's why I have noise cancellation on because I have the air conditioner on. But it can give you a nice smooth sound. It's great for podcasting. Comes in its own little. Let's see. Oh goodness!
Yours came in a case.
A case. Yours didn't come in a case?
I don't know. It might have. Maybe
mine
it's
came
somewhere.
in a case with shock mount and a little diagram of its printout of its frequency response. So they hand test each one of these before they leave the factory, and they're all made here in Irvine, California.
I really like it, and we decided that I tested it for me with the Neumann, and by and large, we decided that the sounded at least as good as the Neumann, which is 3 times more expensive. So this as a cost-effective solution, and it's what I'm using every day. It has the other side effect of if I wear a black shirt, it's not very noticeable. It just kind of blends into the atmosphere. So when I'm in meetings, it's not quite as ostentatious as the Neumann, because I'm in production meetings with production people, and when you run into anybody who knows sound and you have a Neumann sticking up there, it becomes like part of the conversation through the entire meeting. Like, but he's got well, you can listen to him, but he's got a Neumann, it'll come up over and over and over again. So this one's a little less, little lower key.
That's why I keep mine hidden, you see, because it's right here below the frame, and I keep it right out of the frame, but turn sideways so you can rotate it around so it's facing my mouth, and keep the boom arm and the microphone itself out of my way, and I can get my hands under it to type.
And like you, I have the problem that I have a noisy room. So I have a little bit of noise assist on, and I like to keep it closer so that the source and the pickup are a little closer to reduce that. Next question.
I think it's funny in some hotel, somebody's walking around with Alex's metal case that had his Stellar in it. Anyhow, Henry Ramos checks in from Yonkers, New York for simple headset mics straight into a PC laptop with a Manhattan or Sabrent. What's the latest recommendation? Did Pile, now on Polson?
Go ahead, Carl.
So if you want to do a Pile or a Polson head, the way to get it in to a laptop, I think that's a little bit better than using any of the Sabrents, would be using the Rode XLR Pro. Now you can buy, there is a cheaper version of this which doesn't have the belt clip, and then using a TC Helicon. So this is a single channel in. It has phantom power. It goes into USB. It's plug and play, so it's straight into it's USB class compliant. So it'll work into an iPhone, an iPad, and into a Mac. But the most important thing is you've got to convert a plug-in power headset, or a lavalier mic will be the same as well, into XLR. And so with this particular setup here, with these 2 items, you can actually use an XLR microphone, you can use condenser, dynamic, you can use plug and power lavalier, plug and power headset. So these 2 items together, which are going to get close to $100, $120, you can use pretty much any microphone on the planet into nearly any device. And it keeps it cheap.
Yeah, one of the things that was interesting in the early days of the pandemic here in office hours is we had these solutions from these manufacturers, Pile and Polson, were very much talked about. And then at one point, they kind of fell out of favor. And I in my heart, I kind of feel like they had a bunch of backstock. We went through them, and then they either changed something. I remember the Sabrent connector worked for a while, then it didn't work. And so you really do have to kind of find your solutions for your error. And something that worked a year ago may not have made the turn into the new generation of inexpensive production and work the same way. So I'd use the more modern stuff, the recommendations from today, and not stick with the ones from a year and a half ago.
Yeah, I mean, we were looking for things that were light and that were easy to get, and that were relatively inexpensive, that were almost disposable, and so we jumped onto first the Pile and then the Polson. Obviously, the quality is not as high, and so from a panel perspective, we've all moved to pretty much some version of a professional microphone. The one that we kind of settled on as far as the interface goes is the Audio-Technica ATR2X USB, which is the 1/8 inch jack for the Polson that goes into the USB, and we found it to be much more reliable. The real problem that we had is that the Tech Rise, which we were using for a lot of our shows, changed the pinout. and it just changed the way, and basically suddenly we couldn't use it, and all the new ones we bought didn't work. And then as we went through that process, we just stopped using them. So it was an interesting thing that because of this one component going wrong, and then us having to figure it all out, the Sabrent's amplification was too low. The TechRise was, and by the time we found the Audio Technica, which is a better solution, we had moved on. And now what we do is we send out MV7s. we put them near people. It's USB. They plug it in. The other thing that happened is there was a lot of stigma around having a mic sitting in front of you, and that's gone away. That is, in many, many places and many, many meetings, seeing a microphone is not a big deal anymore. And so we realized we just get a much higher quality sound out of something. It is something we have to send back. But finally, the last thing is having a civilian try to put on a headset mic was frustrating. We just got to a point where they didn't like it, especially people who had long hair. It was all this thing, and then they would swing out too far, or it would be pushed into their skin, or it wouldn't, and trying to get it all right. For instance, the problem with I think the Piles was that their arm was really long, and so you had to do this kind of weird twist to get it. You had to go down like this and then over to bend it enough so that it wasn't sticking 3 inches in front of somebody. And so there was a bunch of design, very subtle design problems that we had with a lot of these mics that had us just finally give up and move on. Next question.
The Seventh Scroll in Brooklyn, New York. Just try to make a new city. What are your best budget portable pro audio setups for the iPhone 13 Pro or 14?
Go ahead, Carl.
So again, I'm going to suggest the TC Helicon. This one's a little bit more expensive. So this one actually has some pretty crazy ins and outs. It actually has MIDI in and out. So this is if you want a portable solution that has everything. So it has 2 ins. XLR phantom powered. It has 2 AA batteries to power the phantom power. It has 2 1/4-inch balanced monitor outs. So you're actually getting balanced outs as well. On the other side, you have your headphone outs. And then also you can do a direct. So you can actually use this as a preamp. So you can actually send in the 2 XLR microphones in, and you can have them directly come out by the balanced outs. So use this as a preamp, as an analog preamp. So it has that function as well. It is USB class compliant, so you can plug it into Android phone, iPhone, iPad, Mac, PC. It'll just work. And as I said, it's just 2 AA batteries to power the phantom power itself and power the lights you can see on the display there. But this is pretty much TC Helicon, which deal with all vocal stuff. They're essentially a vocal company. This is pretty much the standard I would be going. No, I wouldn't do anything cheaper than this for if you're asking for pro level, which is very quiet and balanced ins and outs. This is the minimum at the moment.
Carl, does that have lightning in?
So yes, it does have a cable. It comes in the box. It's the output of it is a USB, but it does have the 2 different cables. So it has one that goes to Android and one that goes to iPhone. It comes in the box.
Excellent. Thanks.
And I've used Ceramonic in the past that has goes straight into Lightning or a headset, and we don't use headsets anymore for that. But the headphone jack, and so that's been what we've used in the past. But this one looks great. It looks like it's a lot more fully featured than that. Next question.
Henry Ramos in Yonkers, New York. Where do you draw the line from budget audio to buy once, cry once? Client's budget, say Rode Wireless versus Sony UWP versus a Shure ULX.
Jesse?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's kind of the $1 million question, but I would say it's really related to what the group as a whole is willing to risk, what the client's willing to risk, the participants as far as their experience, the production crew as far as their reputation. It's very risky to mess up an experience if a wireless system drops out or you have some reliability issues. So when you're budgeting for a gig or a production, you really got to put the big bucks into the key pieces of gear and the things that will help the production continue on. And of course, audio is ultra important. Some would say it's more important than video in some cases. So if you can budget less for LED lights or uplights or something like that, or catering or whatever, put the money into the systems that reduce that amount of risk. And check in with the client and check in with the participants and see where they want to put that funding.
And go ahead, Carl.
So the interesting thing about this question, I think, is more the client's budget. So who's paying for this? So essentially, if you're doing a job for a client and they're the ones who are, essentially paying for you, and you can afford from the budget that they're paying for you to buy, let's say the Sonys or the Shures or something like that, then, and you find that they've got features in them that you won't find especially you won't find in the 2.4 gigahertz Rhodes, or even, something like, the Godox megahertz series here, which are the professional series, but essentially you may not find some of the features you'll find in some of the higher end Sennheisers and the Sonys. Then take a look at the budget they're paying you and say, is this an investment for me that I could get these higher end features like gain control on the transmitters and those kind of things that I may want to use in future jobs. So the buy once, cry once you do maybe want to go up market a little bit for certain features that you may use on other gigs or the gig that you're currently being budgeted for. Are the clients, willing to actually make that a line item? Saying, hey, look, you want these things, here's a line item, this is how much it's going to cost, so you can make that a line item. But you are correct there. So this is, if you're buying it for yourself and you're just doing kind of weddings, that kind of stuff, then maybe you want to get redundancy. So you maybe want to get two different versions of a cheaper item rather than getting one expensive item. But if the client's paying, you may want to just get that one expensive item because it does have those tool sets in there that may become beneficial.
Good, Courtney.
I'm always on the lookout for budget stuff, and Carl has made some great suggestions here. I'm not a member of the buy once, cry once. I buy many and shrug a lot, because if you can afford the cheap things, you can buy them and you test them and, hey, it's not really going to work. So move on to the next one. But without buying many, if you just buy at the top of the line or buy the best recommended, you'll never have these little serendipitous discoveries like the Stellar X2 that is a cheaper microphone. But, I have a lot of very expensive microphones, but I prefer this one over my much more expensive microphones. So you'll never have that discovery if you're always on the buy once, cry once. So if you can try things out ahead of time, look at audio rentals in your neighborhood and try renting whatever you're thinking about buying and using it and testing it to see if it fits your application and your environment and it works in the frequencies if it's wireless in your area. So that's a cheap way to test before you buy.
You go ahead, Bill.
And I haven't seen that much change over the course of the years in terms of the audio wireless rigs. Most of them terminate in XLR. Often there's some smaller connectors, but that was the standard for so long that for me, the issue is always taking that XLR balanced audio feed from a good quality system and adapt it to whatever I'm trying to come into. Because it used to be that you would be going directly into an XLR powered amplifier or XLR powered mixing board or something like that. And it was always the same. Now we are in this circumstance where you're just as likely to be feeding something on your laptop and you're looking down there going, okay, I got a 3.5 that says it's optical and something else, and I guess I can get it in by USB-C or something like that. So that last few inches of taking professional audio signals that you've gotten right up all the way through the wireless system to this cable and getting it into whatever device, and there are more and more of them every day, that I need to interface with to get it where I want it to go, is for me the big issue. So spending some money on good converters that we've been talking about to go out Lightning or to go out 3.5 or to go out USB-C or whatever it is that you need to get your signal out to the world, that's where I'm paying attention now. There are a lot of good companies for just wireless systems.
Yeah, your audio chain is reduced to the lowest quality part of that chain. So when you think about, I've seen people put really expensive mics on a cheap preamp, and I'm kind of like, oh, that's not going to work. You're adding a bunch of hiss to it. I admit, it's hard for me to answer this question anymore. I mean, I've done approaching 3,000 events live, and most of the people I work with, you'd know the names, for what they are. And so like my minimum is an Axient. Now I don't own Axients. I rent them. So I don't want to buy 10 channels of Axient. I used to own 8 channels of Axient. But that is like, I won't show up at a location without an Axient, and for the kind of shows that I do, because my risk factor, when we talk about that, chances of something going wrong versus consequences are the end of a client that is spending a lot of money with my company, like that's, and the potential end of people's jobs and, that kind of thing. So you have to decide, what is the risk of what you're doing? Where do I buy cheap stuff? Stuff I do myself. When I do stuff at home, the stuff that I do for free, like if I'm volunteering for something and I oftentimes use free events or things that I do for free or very little money for people as a place to do R&D. So I'm going to experiment with this new idea. I'm going to experiment with saving money somewhere here. I'm going to do all these other things. But remember that you can rent equipment, and a lot of audio equipment is not that expensive, to rent, and so you can rent a mic system. You can rent this for X number of dollars per channel. And it's a much better idea to rent a better quality system than you can afford for most of those events. The way that you build up, I started very scrappy, when my first job was with a laptop and a USB camera, that I was, shooting something, and the audio that was picked up by the laptop, like literally that was the first job. And by the end of, by the time I had finished with my company, we were streaming some pretty big events, pretty big keynotes. And that comes from confidence, and confidence means that you fail, less than 1%, and far less than 1%, like anything goes wrong. And it's not just what anything goes wrong when you're trying to move up, it's that it doesn't feel stressful for the client. Like it needs to feel like everything's under control all the time. That's when they come back to you over and over and over again, is because it works every single time, and there's no hair raising event, and there's no worry, and it comes out as high quality. And it's really worth spending into. I found the only way to do that over time is to buy the equipment, but I buy it very slowly, and I know how much volume I'm going to get and how quickly I'm going to pay it off. But then I try to buy it so that we can control it, we can keep it, and then you need employees or partners or the freelancers that you hire to understand that they are dealing with owned equipment, not rental equipment. And usually that I developed a pretty hard reputation of being pretty edgy when people set my hardware down hard. like you usually my hardware down hard, I'll warn you once and then I'll fire you. Like literally, it's just like, it was just, you'd be gone. I've let people go in the middle of a show for setting my hardware down hard, so, cause I paid for it, and it was always almost all shiny, and that establishes confidence. Next question.
From Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, PA, what are the situations where the purchase of higher tier hardware is key to making a production budget for audio production? For example, automation such as pan-tilt zoom camera, rental eliminates operator expense, Dugan auto mixer, etc.
Good, Carl.
So for all the Godox and Behringer stuff, I recommend there is there are some areas where I would suggest going a little bit higher. So this is when you're recording like a symphony orchestra. So if you're going to build your Decker tree, the microphones that go on the Decker tree, there's only one type of microphone, and they're made by Neumann. And so you'd actually be spending around $22,000 just for those 3 microphones for the Decker tree. This is a very unique microphone made by Neumann. This is the remake. This is a modern remake. It is the M version, but the M50 isn't made anymore because the capsules and the tubes aren't made anymore. So this is the M150. It just simply uses a little bit the same circuitry, but just uses the same capsule. It just uses a different tube because it's not made anymore. But yeah, so this is the price you're looking around $22,000 US just for the 3 mics on the Decker tree. And this is what they have in, they actually have the M50s in Abbey Road and in Sony's recording studios in LA and stuff. But yeah, so this is where you can't really cut corners. Like, there is no microphone out there that will do this. This is the only one in the world that'll actually do what this does.
Good, Mitchell.
Other than doing motion graphic work, my voice is the most important thing to me. So to draw a comparison, the stuff you see behind me, the Neumann U87, the Neve 8801, the console, the DACs and all the other stuff that I have back there, super expensive. Lots of money was invested because, as far as I'm concerned, anything that makes me sound better is good. Now, if I used that gear on this Zoom call, would it sound better? You bet. But it would be total overkill and inappropriate to spend that level of money for Zoom calling. Instead, I've like a repurposed 414, my AFX, and that's about it. And that's all that's necessary. So the point I'm making is that you don't have to overexpend. You can underspend and still get the same job based on the necessity and the target audience that you're working with.
Go ahead, Courtney.
There's kind of a line that I look at. If I'm having to take any of my equipment and put it in the hands of an actor or actress, you have to make sure it's bulletproof, because the cheaper stuff will not hold up. It's not going to endure, them trying to yanking it off themselves or unwiring themselves or wiring themselves. So there I'll spend a little more money on higher end wireless mics, because I know they'll have the endurance. They're built like tanks. They have metal chassis. They'll hold up to the abuse that third parties can put on them. If it's something that I'm using myself and I'm always in control of it, I'll be treating it correctly. I'll know I won't be mishandling it or misusing it or packing it correctly when I ship it. So there I can actually use a lot of the budget stuff, especially for backup, because that way I know I can be covered on something and not have to break the bank by paying 2 times the expensive price for the high-end gear.
The other reason that I got into buying gear is because I noticed that about a third of the budgets that I was handing to people were gear. And so if I'm renting it, I was making very little on it. If I was owning it, I was making a lot on it. I didn't not charge for the gear because I owned it. Literally there were months that I've done work that we made more money on the gear rentals than we made on everything else, and generally what I did is I in my former company, I had a third of my rental budget was for new purchases. So, and that sometimes was as little as a couple $100, and as much as I had one job that I had every year that a third of my rental budget was $100,000. So it was, and so that was, you always knew that all the new stuff was going to show up in October, so because I was able to, to upgrade, and we just keep on upgrading. And that's how, I admit that's how you end up with a 10,000 foot warehouse full of toys. Next question.
This is from Paul Shadwell in Turbenthal, Switzerland. Paul asked, I stretched my budget to a Sound Devices MixPre 3 a while ago, but yet I have been unsuccessful working well enough to use in office hours. Should I put it through the A10 Mini Pro, direct to the Mac Studio, or some other route?
You should ping Mickey on the Discord and set up a time in after hours to meet him there and have him work through whatever's going on at his schedule. Whenever Mickey's available to do it. He is the MixPre Uber Ultra Ninja.
Can we say God? Does God apply?
No, that's too much. No, I don't think Mickey would appreciate that. But I'm just saying there's a level of ninja-ness that Mickey has that he'll be embarrassed that I just did that. But he knows it. I've never seen anybody that understands. Like anytime I can't figure something out with my MixPre, I'm just going to talk to Mickey about this. I'm not going to try to. I won't even read a manual. I'm sorry, Mickey. I probably should, but I'm just going to talk to Mickey about it. And over time, talking to him, I've gotten my head, fully around. Not fully around it, but mostly around it. And so anyway, I'd recommend that. Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, and to answer the question about whether or not you should run it to the A10 Mini, the answer is run it directly into the computer rather than the A10 Mini. Yeah. You can also set up your output delays and stuff right on the A10 or right on the MixPre. So that's the way to go. Bypass the A10 Mini audio input whenever possible.
And Mickey said, on my schedule, my, what a treat. Because everyone's usually, Mickey will be in after hours and someone will come up and just go, Mickey, are you there? So I almost feel like we need, there's so many of us that have MixPres, we probably need to think about a MixPre lab that we do every week, just so that we can all talk about things. Because there's the MixPres are so deep that there are so many places to go to make that work.
And not just the MixPres. I'm convinced Mickey has the entire circuit diagram of my Universal Audio Apollo Solo that he carries in his head, because every time I have a problem, he knows exactly how to fix it.
Because I just had to use Mickey. Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I was just going to say, I think Mickey said that if I were to buy a MixPre and replace my AFX, that he would literally fly here and do it personally for me.
I don't think he said that. The visa will take a while. So anyway, next question.
John Snyder in Reno, Nevada. What's your approach to purchasing equipment? If someone were wanting to get started in your industry and had a limited budget but was planning on growing over time, what equipment would you recommend they purchase and in what order?
Go ahead, Carl.
So if you're talking about like the industry that a lot of us are in, which is video production, maybe live, maybe recorded, a mixed pre of some sort. So if we're talking audio today, then a mixed pre would be good for records. It also is good for live, as we see here on the panel. So mixed pre 3, but probably mixed pre 6 if you're trying to sell your wares. Probably be a minimum start. That get you 4 ins. Mixed pre 10 if you intend to do larger gigs. So, but that would be minimum purchase as far as an audio interface or on-site recording, or how we use it as far as here on a live stream, and we can use it with noise assist, that kind of thing. Think about microphones. Microphones, you don't have to get the most expensive microphones, as we said, like the T-Bone, but you want to think about microphones for situations. So if you want to get like a minimum kind of equipment set where you can actually start to sell your service, then I'd say maybe a mixed pre 6. You want to get some microphones where if you are doing like a panel discussion, like at a conference, and they're all sitting like in a line, then you can do headsets, you can do lavaliers, you can have like a set of each. I'm not going to say brands, just you kind of want a bit of everything. And then as far as you kind of want like a recorder that's not the mixed pre as well. So that's another thing you want to think about as well. So if you may be using the mixed pre on stage for something, you need a separate recorder. It doesn't have to have all the preamps, it just needs to have a recording of some sort, like a T8 from Tascam would be another one that's similar to a mixed pre in a way, as far as the mic inputs. But it depends on what type of work you want to get into. So the type of stuff I do is more record stuff. I don't do too much live stuff as far as audio. So I only have to worry about the record stuff and the preamps and the microphones. The live stuff is not a big thing, but you do have to think about kind of what use case it's going to be. And then come back to us another day with another question once you know roughly what use case it is, like live production or records or video records. So in other words, sound for video. And then we can give you a bit more of a detailed, this is a bare minimum you'll need before you can start selling your service.
And Harshid, real quick, we're like 10 seconds because we're
basically, I would say go for audio first. You could make a presentation and use B-roll to make anything as any kind of professional video. So if you have a good microphone and maybe a good interface like SSL2 or Mo2, inexpensive, and it'll get you far.
And to Carl's point, tell us exactly the kind of business you're trying to get into, and we can customize that solution. Next question.
Ronnie Hofsoy in Tromsø, Norway. Most compact mixer with Dugan Auto Mix for really compact use when Behringer and similar is too big.
Real quick, Courtney.
Zoom F6, because for the bang for the buck, it's got auto mix. It's got 6 inputs. You don't get much smaller than this. It's battery powered, internal batteries. It takes Sony type batteries. It has time code. It has USB interface. So it checks all those boxes for a decent price, under $700.
Good, Carl.
Yep, and if the X32 is too big, then the XR18 is relatively small. You can fit pretty much. You can turn it on at the side as well. So 16 inputs, auto mix.
Good, Jesse.
Waves LV1 with the Dugan Speech plugin would work too.
And also know that there's a Midas core, which is a 1U, and it basically you just need to know that your analog's going to come some other way, either AES50, Dante, or the Ultranet. But if you're that's going to be a 1U solution that you can slide right in. We used to use the X32 core that was discontinued, and just the Midas is the only one left, or they just changed the brand to charge another $300 or something. And then finally, I would be tempted to use a Mix Pre 10. Next question.
Chris Widener, Lafayette, Indiana. The Godoc's recommendation from Carl has worked great when I needed an other than 2.4 gig wireless setup. My handheld XLR mic I pair with it is a Movo, and any recommendations for an inexpensive replacement?
Good, Carl.
Essentially, if you obviously a Shure SM58, the Behringer version of the Shure SM58, but it needs a bit more power to drive that one actually. And then the Sennheiser MD46. So this is what was used at the NAMM.
Next question.
From David Brady in New York, New York. For comms headsets, has anyone considered tactical ear tube microphones? Might be a little more aesthetically appealing than the Aftershocks, which I have.
Real quick, Bill.
Yeah, I don't use the tube things, but those are stealthy. These, which is the N-ear that I mentioned before, the wires are so small and the headset is so small that it performs the same function. You literally cannot see it, even if somebody turns their head toward the camera, unless they are specifically looking for it.
Go ahead, Courtney, real quick.
I'm using the H5S in-ear monitors. They're not as stealthy as the others. They use the tube, and these are about $10 a piece, 2 for $20. And they work quite well. Eventually, the wire here at this connection starts to break and wear out, get intermittent. But other than that, for $10, you can't miss it.
Yeah, and the ones that I've used in the past have been it's not N-ear, it's the other one. I mean, it's N-ears.
Bumblebee or
the
something.
The Bumblebees as well as the Ear Heroes are just the finest wire that you can possibly put in, and it's used by some pretty high security groups. And I've literally gotten, it was so crazy, when I first started wearing Ear Heroes, I literally got a job because the person was so impressed that the level of detail that I was paying attention to just for comms was an Ear Hero. So, those fine details in the right place at the right time pay off. Next question.
Colin Mulcahy in Dublin, Ireland. Anyone using Midas consoles?
Go ahead, Jesse.
Lots of people use them, especially since they're now owned by a music group. But I still see a lot of Midas heritage consoles on the road and also being used as monitor boards because of the really distinct sound quality.
Yeah, I haven't seen any. In what I do, I haven't seen any large Midas boards. We used to own. I used to own 5 of the X30, the X32 version of the Midas, the M32s, and they were like tanks. So we liked them a lot. So, but I haven't seen any of the larger ones in the wild for a decade. All right. We almost got that all done. That was a busy. I have to admit, when Josh put that in, I didn't have any. Josh is taking over the second hours, so a lot of times I don't know what the second hours are when I get here. So I just get. He's even doing the email that you get now is written by Josh, and which has been great for me. But it means that I'm kind of like. And when I saw it go by, I was like, are we really going to be able to talk about this for an hour? Like, we're not really the budget crew, And I was like, I don't know if this is really going to work. And it was a great second hour. So I'm just going to keep on staying out of Josh's way. So anyway, really well done, Josh. And thanks to all the producers for all the great questions. And I can tell that a lot of people are trying to solve things. So keep on asking those questions and keep on trying to solve them. And we're here every day to answer those questions for you. Thanks to the panelists. Great set of answers. Great conversation. Can't do this without you. And thanks to the incredible crew in the back end that is making all of this possible. It's going to be exciting times next 6 weeks. We're going to make some big changes. And so I'm really excited to have. And we couldn't do it without the production crew and the knowledge and the effort that they put into it up until now. So thanks for the hard work. And now a reminder that David Paskin is going to be talking about Ecamm right into after hours as we jump in, and so make sure to come in. And of course, we have different things happening. We have David on Tuesdays. We've got Ken Jordan talking about web development on Wednesdays, and on Thursdays we've got Elle coming in. I think Elle has now moved his schedule back to the normal 9 o'clock time. And then also remember that at 1 o'clock we have our labs. That if you're interested for ZoomISO, if I have time today. When I get out of Mac break, I may try to jump in to the lab to work out my ISO issues that I need to have. Has to work today because I'm using it tomorrow. So anyway, no pressure. Anyway, so stay tuned for that. All right.
We're still doing Final Cut on Friday at noon.
Final Cut on Friday at noon. Yes. Sorry about that, Bill. And you're going to keep doing that.
Yeah, I'm going to keep doing it until we started on lesson 1. I redid lesson 1 yesterday. We're going to go through all 6 at least.
Outstanding. All right, excellent. So Bill, the Final Cut stuff, and if you're trying to get into Final Cut, Bill is just a perfect source to get you going down the path. So if you're interested in it all, if you've downloaded it, is there a 30-day on or 90-day on Final Cut, Bill, or is that just a that a temporary
I haven't
thing?
Seen anything. I do know that the university discount, the education discount, I think is still live.
That is the best deal ever. $199 for all the things. I thought it was just for Final Cut. It was like, no, you get all of the things for $199.
You get Logic, you get all this stuff for $199 permanently.
It's a pretty good deal. Yeah, absolutely. So Bill at noon on Friday. All right. Let's go ahead and jump into After Hours. Also, education. Education's coming back.
I have an announcement, Alex.
Yes.
We shamed Jonas into making a Mac version of InfoBee.
I can't wait.
Oh,
and streaming.
excellent.
Now I don't have to buy a PC when he makes it work for streaming. 148,000 miles. That's how much the Tlaloc traversal. 148. This is a busy day. We travel a lot of miles in one day. That's like that's a 1K.
My arms are exhausted.
That's a 1K membership plus some. Like on our way to global services.